Part of our series this month of recognizing women from our past. And tonight we want to recognize Polly Dean Bradish. And my biggest feat over the last couple of weeks was finding out that Polly Dean is listed everywhere, including many record books, as D-E-A-N. In reality, she was born Polly Dean, D-E-A-N-E. So we're going to have to go around changing all the signs in town and a couple of history books, but just a fun little fact. Slavery in Massachusetts. You want to start okay. The first known servants or slaves to arrive in the non-Spanish settlements of North America were a group of 20 men, women, and children aboard the pirate ship, the White Lion, that landed at Jamestown, Virginia in 1619. There, the pirates sold them for food and supplies. About 10 months later, the Mayflower, an English ship which was on its journey to Jamestown, when a series of strong storms forced her north, arriving at Cape Cod Hook, now known as Provincetown, Massachusetts. Aboard the overcrowded transport ship were 102 passengers and a crew of 30. The Mayflower was overcrowded due to a sister ship by the name of Speedwell, leaking so badly that it had to be returned to port. Therefore, they combined all the passengers onto the Mayflower. The Mayflower passengers all kind of knew each other, though. And so over time, they referred to their visitors as strangers. Literally, that was what they called them. And the strangers were of mixed breed, unlike the Puritan aboard the Mayflower. This resulted in travel being an English Puritans and passengers on the ship for many, many weeks together, but there was an understanding that they've landed in a strange place as well, Provincetown Harbor, well, later Provincetown Harbor. So the Mayflower Compact was signed. Well, they were still on board before the actual landing. And basically, it was an order that resulted in successful, peaceful coexistence because they knew they'd have to work together once they got on the land. Over the next 246 years, it is estimated that 10 million North African slaves would arrive and be sold in North America. Now, this does not include 5 million or so that were sold to Spanish-holded areas. So you're up to like 15 million. Over the next, okay, I'm sorry. Next slide. During 1772, the anti-slavery discussion grew louder and louder. Among the first to decry its existence were the Quakers, who vehemently denounced the practice of one human being sold to another. Sentiment in England was very strong, and in a growing wave of disallowance of slavery, they were the first to make a law, anti-slavery law. It was 1772 and was known as an act, the Granville-Sharp Act, that prohibited West Indian planters from holding slaves while they were in Britain. Massachusetts declared slavery illegal in 1780. They tagged along with most of the states north of Maryland. They all pretty much came on board at the same time. Growing demand for top quality Southern cotton caused the opposite effect as the British Act, as the need for low-cost labor was greater than ever before. While cotton was a Southern crop, the cotton industry stretched throughout the United States with great demand on businesses and being in the industrial North. So efforts to thwart slavery were met with great division and divisiveness. both North and South. William Lloyd Garrison. William Lloyd Garrison of Boston gave his first anti-slavery speech at Park Street Church on July 4th, 1829. By 1832, he would organize the New England Anti-Slavery Society, organizing public speeches, writing newspaper articles, and even publishing a weekly newspaper known as The Liberator. The Liberator was a 4-page newspaper filled with fiery and radical anti-slavery language that played upon the heartstrings of New Englanders. Publication by the early 1840s was 3,000 copies per week. And I know a gentleman in this room who read every chapter, and he's going to speak soon. I'm talking from 1833 to 1860 something, in just the last month or so. Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass was born Frederick Bailey in 1818. He was born into slavery and was owned by Colonel Lloyd of Northern Maryland. Over the years, he would be sold or leased to other owners, including one Captain Thomas Auld, who was a ruthless and cruel slaveholder. Douglass planned several escapes, and of course his name is Bailey at this point. But Douglass planned several escape attempts, including one failed attempt to take a canoe northward with 4 of the men. They were caught and severely beaten. That was in 1834. At one point, he met an Anna Murray. She was a free black woman of the Baltimore community. After another beating by Auld, Douglass came up with a plan to dress as a black sailor. He created false identification papers and successfully made his way to a steamer bound for Philadelphia and thence to New York City. Here, Anna met up with him, and they were married. Together, they made their way to New Bedford, Massachusetts, where Douglass changed his name. They got a job. He got a job as a laborer in the seaport, though his trade was as a ship's caulker, but caulkers were not hireable if they were black. So he took a laborer's job. While residing in New Bedford, Douglass discovered the writings of William Lloyd Garrison, and he immediately became a follower, traveling to Nantucket in 1841 to hear Garrison speak. Douglass was invited to speak there, and his story was met with incredible support and intrigue. As a result, Garrison invited him to become an agent of the Massachusetts Anti-Slavery Society. The Fugitive Slave Act of 1850. A part of the Compromise of 1850, the Fugitive Slave Act was a compromise between southern states and northern free soilers who were vehemently opposed to expanding slavery into the western frontier. They would later become the Republican Party. The act required that all escaped slaves, upon capture, would be returned to their owners and provided bonuses and promotions for any officer of the law assisting in the same. It also created a $1,000 fine for anyone harboring, feeding, transporting a fugitive slave, a penalty that could also be 6 months in prison. Understand that in 1850, $1,000 was worth $38,000 today. It was quite the fine. Bill, I'd like to call on Bill Taylor. He's our Vice President and Treasurer, who's done on his own, hearing about this program. Dug really deep. He's got some cool stuff. Thank you.
So I want to make it clear that I did not read 30 years.
I got to add a little something to it. Yeah.
I took advantage of all the great search tools to search for instances where Upton appeared and where Bradish appeared. to get a sense of how Upton and Polly Dean Bradish supported the anti-slavery efforts. In New England at the time, in Massachusetts, there were several different types of anti-slavery societies. At the very top of the national one was the American Anti-Slavery Society. There was the Massachusetts Anti-Slavery Society, which was originally known as the New England Anti-Slavery Society. There was also a Boston Female Anti-Slavery Society. And then Worcester County had two societies, a South and North Division. And then Upton had the Upton Union Anti-Slavery Society. And then there was an Upton Ladies Female Anti-Slavery Society. Now, Polly Dean Bradish actually ended up supporting most of those, all of those in one way or another. A lot of the work that Polly Dean did was associated with anti-slavery fairs. And these were 2 or 3 day events with speakers with the primary purpose of raising money by selling refreshments and all sorts of different goods that they would get donations of. So Polly Dean participated in the Boston Anti-Slavery Bazaar, which was at the held in Boston, and was the principal leader of that was Maria Weston Chapman. And in the articles in the Liberator, she calls out Upton for its support of her anti-slavery fair or bazaar. She was part of a group of people that created and organized the Worcester County Anti-Slavery Bazaar. And so she was a part of that for about 15 years, the entire time it was in business. And she held regular fairs in Upton. So I do have a couple of examples of some of the stuff that appeared in the Liberator. And this is from February 28th of 1845. And it starts off with, "Well done, Upton. Upton is a small village, and among its inhabitants, there is as yet but few are able to take their position and maintain it as uncompromising abolitionists. The result of the fair is therefore highly encouraging and much beyond our anticipation. This is mainly owing to the untiring zeal and perseverance of Mrs. Bradish, who, though deprived of the elective franchise, is worth more to our cause than a whole tribe of politicians." So there's one example of Polly getting called out in the Liberator for the work that she's done. I have another example, and this is from November 30th, 1839. As a fine specimen of what woman is capable, we would state that it was our privilege to attend the Ladies' Anti-Slavery Fair, which was held in the small but pleasant village of Upton on Thursday the 21st. It was projected and carried through by the energy of a single woman, P.D. Bradish, assisted to some extent by a few other warm-hearted females. So that was all organized by the woman. And I'll give you a sense of what happened at a fair. It was held in the beautiful and spacious town hall, which was tastefully decorated with spruce, evergreen, etc. 3 tables, some 40 or 50 feet in length, were spread, presenting to the eye a most inviting entertainment, being covered with a great variety of provisions, suited to the taste and appetite of everyone. Other tables were covered with useful and handsomely wrought articles for sale. The price of the admission to the fair, including supper, was 50 cents. So that's a sense of how they were raising money through the fairs. And then finally, I have this other quote, which is also a comment on a fair held in Upton.
Number 2, if you want it to be.
Yeah, here we go. May the Sisters of Charity in all our towns ere long follow the worthy example set then by the Female Anti-Slavery Society in Upton, and make 10,000 such rills as these become confluent in one vast river of public sentiment, which shall sweep away the abominations of slavery into everlasting oblivion.
So track 20.
So
not that,
that's
track 22. Yeah.
So, since he was raising